Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We know that getting to Central Park is still pretty difficult for a lot of people, so we want to continue bringing the park to you through different 45-minute virtual programs held on select weekdays and weekends, as well as our shorter 15-minute informal weekly walks every Wednesday at 12:30. So thank you for joining us today for another weekly walk, today where we're going to be exploring Cedar Hill, a landscape in about the mid-park area along the east side of Central Park. We're going to be together again for about 15 minutes or so, and as per usual, all the photos you're going to see were taken by myself the past week here in Central Park. Before we begin, you of course probably know a little bit about us. We're the organization, the Central Park Conservancy, that helps to take care of Central Park, helping to keep it clean and green, with our mission being to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. Before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. We are using Zoom, so if you do want to say hello, use the chat box to let us know where you're joining us from. See plenty of people doing that already. And if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature, and my colleagues, Jose, Juan, and Ian are all on the back end answering any questions you might have. Last thing you're going to see pop up are some visitor polls I'll launch throughout the walk today. And I'll launch one of those in just a little bit. After everybody's voted, we can share the results and see what we're thinking. So let's begin our walk today. Cedar Hill. We're going to begin around 76th Street and on 5th Avenue, entering the park right about the mid area of the park. Again, this little landscape nestled along the east side gets its name from some of the cedar trees growing there, but we're going to see there's a lot more than just cedar trees growing in this historic hilly landscape. As we begin our walk on 76th Street and 5th Avenue, we're going to take a walk on a rainy day in the park. We've been having a lot of really nice weather, a lot of nice sunshine for our walks. So it's only right we get to the park on a rainy, kind of gloomy seeming day and really enjoy the park in a different perspective. So as we enter the park at Children's Gate at 76th and 5th Avenue, we're going to get our umbrellas ready and walk into this really beckoning green landscape that we have here. And as we start to come in, we can notice a feature of mine that I love to see during these rainy, gloomy days, the lamppost being on in the middle of the day. There's something about coming into the park and having the lamppost on during the day where there's still some of these shadows existing, creating a little bit more ambiance to the park. As we do walk in, just because it's gloomy and rainy doesn't mean that we're not going to still see beautiful spring blooms. Here we're going to see a type of viburnum. This is a Korean spice viburnum. A bunch of different viburnum species can be seen throughout the park, and many produce a nice little flower during this time. On top of the pretty flower, we can also notice the coating of petals left along the ground. And I love observing these little seemingly just green patches of shrubs as we enter the park, because we can see a lot of different life and excitement when we just pay a little bit more attention. Just looking at the beautiful droplets of water on some of the leaves that exist here is really beautiful all in itself. Admiring this beauty a little bit closer also leads us to new discoveries. While we're admiring these water droplets, we can look underneath the leaf and see flowers that might have gone unnoticed. This is a plant called Solomon seal. And on top of those nice leafy green leaves we see coming, we also have these little hanging flowers that are right on the underside. Something we may have missed if we didn't take a moment to stop and appreciate this little bed of flowers. As we keep walking, there's still plenty of flowers blooming, even though it's a gloomy day. We're going to see here a type of alder plant. This is going to be a mountain witch alder. And we do see these types of plants being native to New York. So it's fun to see them here in the park, adding again different shades of white and different types of flowers, with this one looking more like a bottle brush. Fun little detail to see as we enter the park. And immediately we're already seeing so much as we come in just a few feet to Central Park. As we continue walking, do get drawn in by yet another little bed of flowers as we look over to the right, and we see a nice bench row as well as a nice shrub patch of azaleas. A little too wet to sit down over here, but of course we can certainly enjoy the flowers. Stopping and smelling the flowers certainly has no reduction just because of the weather. So we can certainly stop and see these nice water-coated azaleas. I actually want to launch a poll as we're entering the park enjoying the rain. Has anybody ever had an opportunity to walk around Central Park in the rain? Maybe you don't like to or haven't had the opportunity yet. Maybe you do and you like walking around in the rain. I also put an option, maybe you have walked around the rain, but you didn't really plan to do so. We've all been there, we've been caught in some rainstorms and unfortunately haven't been prepared. But I'll let people vote in that as we continue walking down the path. Making our way a little bit towards the west right now, or northwest, we'll head up and come to a pretty recognizable arch over here. This is Glade Arch. It was created around 1860 by one of the creators of Central Park, Calvert Vaux, and it's made of sandstone and brick. As we pass underneath this, we can be transported to the Cedar Hill landscape. But before we do, we can notice yet again some more beautiful little flowers. These are some of my favorite to grow in this kind of shape and design. They're a type of kamas. This is I might be pronouncing that wrong. This is a common kamas, which produces, again, this really cool growth. And I love these up top, which haven't fully bloomed yet, adding a little bit of a cluster and really giving us something to look forward to as it continues to bloom in the coming week. As we pass through Glade Arch, we're starting to get our first look at Cedar Hill. We actually can't really even see any cedars yet, which is where Cedar Hill is getting its name. You can see a different type of coniferous tree we'll see in a little bit. But as we come up and look at that hilly landscape, we can admire how bare and open it is, basically getting the park to ourselves today, one of the benefits of walking around during the rain. And as we start making our way just to the south now to come right around on top of Glade Arch, we can admire the balance of shrubs all to our left and then an open Cedar Hill to our right. And as we come by looking over Cedar Hill, we can again see a bunch of different types of trees here, not just cedars here, so the name might be a little bit misleading. Plenty of other deciduous and coniferous trees, a favorite of mine being the shugi over here, or Japanese cedar. As we continue walking along, we'll make our way on top of Glade Arch. And of course, a few people still walking around in the rain today, because some people enjoy walking around in the rain. And ending that poll that we have, I can share the results and seeing plenty of people looks like agree. They don't mind getting a little wet, especially when we have beautiful things in Central Park to keep us busy and occupied with. A couple people haven't got the opportunity yet, but don't worry, I'm sure you will, especially with the weather we've been having. You never know when you're going to get hit with a surprise rainstorm. And of course, plenty of people have been caught in the rain too, and I've certainly been there myself. As we continue walking today, luckily we're prepared and we do have our umbrellas. And as we pass over Glade Arch, we can see just how wide it is. This archway used to transport horse-drawn carriage traffic to Fifth Avenue and into the park. Of course, it's no longer used for that today, but we have the remnants of this very wide-topped arch here to remind us. As we continue over Glade Arch, we can take a look over again at Cedar Hill. And finally, we see some people walking around here. And appropriately enough, it's somebody with a dog. Cedar Hill is sometimes known as Puppy Hill in the mornings because between 6 and 9 a.m. during off-leash hours for dogs, you'll see countless dogs running around here, burning off energy and enjoying the beauty of this landscape. So an appropriate reminder of what of the many things that this landscape is used for. As we continue walking along, we can notice this plaque along one of the rocks, which commemorates some of the restoration work that's been done in this area, but also mentions the name Samuel Parsons Jr., who you may have heard before. He was another influential figure in Central Park, really being one of the landscape architects who oversaw work in the park from about 1880 to about 1910, certainly having a hand in designing many landscapes, ones like Cedar Hill, which certainly expressed his influence for diverse trees to be found around. And as we continue making our way around, we'll come to some of those trees. We can admire this American sycamore on our right, adding a little bit of white color to, again, this sort of gloomy looking day. And as we come around the path, it may seem like it's going to be really quiet. And since there's not really many people in the park and it's raining, but it's anything but that. Because even though it's raining, there's a bunch of birds like this American robin running all along the field, getting some food because they can actually sense movements in the ground. So when all the earthworms are coming up and it's raining, these robins basically have a buffet waiting for them. So there's a bunch of robins running around as we walk, catching worms and singing while they do so, giving us a nice melody as we walk through the park. As we wrap around these rainy soaked paths, we'll come up, getting to see a little bit more of the color that also exists along Cedar Hill, getting shades of green, red, brown, and many other little kind of almost yellows mixed in there. Continuing up, we can see again plenty of more shrubs that are blooming now as we get into the mid area of spring. And as we come a little closer, we can enjoy this one, which is a type of hawthorn. I believe it's a common hawthorn, but looks very nice, a little bit different as we come closer than some of the other flowers like the viburnum we saw. We can enjoy the glistening of the leaves from, again, this just nice rainy day. Continuing up the path, we're coming into the shadows now as we walk under some of these massive trees along Cedar Hill's base. And as we continue up along this shadowy area, we can come to some of those trees we saw a little bit before, which are going to be Norway spruce trees, a type of coniferous or evergreen type of tree. But even though it's called evergreen, it has a lot more than just green. We can see different shades of green existing here, as well as gold, brown, and almost amber type of colors. And as we start to peek around and look at the tree a little bit more, we can even find some reds existing there, like some of these early pine cones growing, and again, just some really cool types of colors. As we continue walking along, just up Cedar Hill, we have a little bit of exercise to do as we make our way to the top peak of this hill. And as we continue walking up, we can admire some of the cedar trees existing in a line just in the back of this photo. Of course, as we've already seen, many other trees besides just cedars here. And as we come up, we can see a favorite aspect of mine, a really easy way to tell that the park was really built around what existed here before, things like the rock. As we come up, we can see the rock protruding from the path, and a favorite of mine, a kind of blend of man-made architecture and nature, as we see this rock coming and forming a grassy 90-degree angle with the man-made path. It's a really cool blending point right here, in my opinion. And as we come up, we can see what is arguably my favorite rock in Central Park. The rock here throughout all of New York is really historic and really ancient. The rock dates from roughly 190 million years old up to 1 billion years old. There's a few different types of rock found throughout New York. The oldest, which is 1 billion years old, is going to be Fordham gneiss, which can be found up towards the Bronx, near the Fordham area. Here in Manhattan, we see different types of marble up in Inwood, and primarily in Central Park, schist. Schist is the main bedrock of New York, which is about 500 or so million years old. This rock is really, really amazing and can be seen in large outcroppings all throughout Central Park. This rock, we can actually see some of the different striations and other types of rocks that are in here. Many of these striations, different grooves, and really the shape of Manhattan's hills were carved out by a large glacier, the Wisconsin ice sheet, which started about 1.5 million years or so ago, about 1.5 million years ago, starting up towards Labrador, Canada, working its way down to as far south as New York City. Started at about 10,000 feet thick and worked its way down to about 1,000 by the time it reached New York. But as it traveled over here, it carved out many different things. It carved out the Finger Lakes in New York, it deepened the Hudson River, and it dragged other glacial erratics or stones and debris across Manhattan, or what would become Manhattan, leaving these cool striations, different steps like we can see here, and a lot of different patterns in this rock. A really, really cool piece of natural history and geology that is just protruding from the ground all around New York. A lot of cool history we can see just in the simple patches of rock. And a little bit more history we can see here is actually a little bit of New York infrastructure. If you joined us for past walks like the Reservoir or Cherry Blossoms Walk, you may have learned about the Croton Aqueduct system and some of the pipelines that bring drinking water to New York City. Started way back in the 1900s and finished around 1917, was the first of 3 water tunnels that would expand New York City's water infrastructure. That project again began around 1912, and the third of 3 water tunnels was set to be finished right around this year in 2021. And this little seemingly unnoticeable manhole type cover area is actually part of that 3rd water tunnel. So interesting to think, beyond just the really, really old rock running under the park, there's also amazing technological advances like this system delivering water to millions of people in New York. That was a little long-winded, but don't worry, we're back to reality. We're back here at Cedar Hill, taking a glance over at this landscape, which of course is beautiful today, but as we've already learned from the rock and the water that runs underneath, it's very historic. And it goes even beyond that. This landscape was used for quite a few things. Central Park, of course, we all know as a hub for culture, art, and really just people being able to express themselves in different ways. We can certainly see that being the case starting early on in Central Park. We would eventually see different type of events coming into Central Park, many events known as happenings, many which began around the 60s. Here we can see a picture of one happening, this one taking place actually around Pilgrim Hill and not Cedar Hill, but this one being called Kinetic Environment 2. And it was around October 29th, 1967. It's by an artist, Willoughby Sharp. And the idea for this was public art installations that were brought in, art installations made of water, ice, fog, bubbles, and balloons, and encouraging crowds to come and interact with them. As we can see this young child touching the ice and presumably holding a balloon, but really encouraging people to interact in the art. This was the second festival of its type, as we may have guessed from Kinetic Environment 2, but we see many different festivals happening. The first happening in Central Park actually occurring on Cedar Hill. This is a photo I've showed in the past, but a photo I really love because it expresses really this culture boom here in Central Park. And it started here in Cedar Hill. This is from a cartoon performance from around May 15th, 1966, and it was the first happening in Central Park. 105-foot canvas was brought in, and the public was encouraged to draw on it using various different mediums. It was a very open-ended event, basically just saying, we're gonna set up this canvas, it's gonna be open from daylight until it either gets too dark, the weather gets too bad, or we run out of canvas to paint on. Encouraging people to stop by all throughout the day, rather than one fixed time, to really invite and encourage people to be a part of this piece of history here in Central Park. This actually leads me to a poll I wanna launch as we get towards the end of our walk. I wanna launch a poll and see what you may have attended in Central Park. We have a lot of people on these walks. There's almost 500 people here with us right now, and want to see what you may have done in Central Park, whether it be a concert, maybe you attended a movie night, one of the festivals we'd offer, maybe you attended a happening before, maybe you've been to something like a wedding that's more private, but I'm gonna let people vote on that. Of course, I couldn't fit everything in there, so I did put the option for other, but I encourage you, if there's something that's not on that list that's interesting, please share it in the chat, and hopefully we can look over those and see some of the interesting things that we've all been a part of here in Central Park. As we let that continue, I'm going to bring us to our last stop. As we walk up to the top of Cedar Hill, we can make a left and start walking to that top peak point. As we do walk over though, we do want to be careful because it is wet and rainy. And I don't mean we want to be careful because we don't want to slip. We definitely don't want to do that. But we really want to be careful for the turf of the park. Turf and grass, all of these areas are going to be more susceptible to damage when they're wet. So when we walk on these surfaces after a rainstorm, we want to be really careful, maybe only walk on them if we have to, but if we are walking on them, just take our time, walk as least obtrusively as possible, and try not to damage this turf so people can enjoy it when it's nice out. So we'll very carefully walk on this and make our way over to a rock so we don't have to walk on the grass too much. As we come over, we can enjoy one of the many rustic benches that exist over here on Cedar Hill or in Central Park, giving us a nice little view of the area. Before we look at that view though, we can take a peek at, again, what's giving Cedar Hill its name, a strand of various different cedar trees around the area. Cedar trees being one of the many different types of coniferous trees, looking a little different than those Norway spruce we saw before, but adding a little bit of character to the diversity of evergreen trees we see up here. And as we make our way to that bench, we can sit down and get one last beautiful rainy day view here of Cedar Hill, seeing some of those different shades of green popping in. And again, taking a nice breath and relaxing, enjoying the beauty of this peaceful landscape, which we have pretty much all to ourselves, and enjoying a historical area. As we wrap up and come to the end of this, I do want to end that poll and share the results. So see what a lot of people have been to. And as I end that and share that, it's really cool. We see a lot of people coming to concerts in the park. Of course, many historic concerts occurring on Sheep Meadow and various areas before eventually coming to the Great Lawn. Today, we have the Central Park Summer Stage. Maybe you've attended back in the 1960s when the Schaefer concert series occurred in what is today Woolman Rink and the Victoria Gardens amusement park during the summer, but a lot of history and concerts, some people attending some of the movie nights and the festivals we do, like the Pumpkin Flotilla and Dog Fair. See a couple of people coming for weddings, a bunch of people for Shakespeare in the Park, which is a really great one. We have the Harlem Year Performance Festival, which is going to be occurring this year. And of course, there's countless others. Definitely, I noticed somebody the other day mentioned things like the New York City Marathon. So there's really so many different things to really bring us into the park and things to do. I look forward looking through some of the comments and chats and seeing what we have. I see some people saying New Year's Eve fireworks, some of the John Lennon tributes on anniversaries of his birthday and things like that. Some people with the tennis and the Schaefer concert series. So really cool. I'm going to look through some of these, and I thank you for all for voting in these, as well as sharing some of your memories that you had here in Central Park. I want to thank you again so much for joining us today and for again sharing some of these memories and letting us in on a little bit of the beauty you've experienced here in the park. With that, we do come to the end of our walk. Here's the route we've taken. If anybody would like to walk this route yourself, you don't have to do it in the rain though. You can wait for a nicer day like today here in New York City. But thank you for joining us from all around the world and all around the country. Love doing these walks. We love having you. We are doing more walks coming up. If you do want to attend future programs, tomorrow today at 3 p.m., we're going to have a behind the scenes special tour looking at protecting Central Park's trees. People from our tree crew, which are really amazing people to talk to, as well as tomorrow, a spring tree tour before we get into summer. And then of course, next week, a weekly walk where we're going to be exploring Shakespeare Garden. We have a lot to tune into, but thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you in the future. From all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe and be well, and see you soon.